A ship drifts into port after 2 long years at sea. Its timbers groan, seams leak, and the entire vessel seems to be stitched together more with hope than with wood or iron. The crew looks exhausted, yet proud. They have circled the world. But hidden beneath this triumphant return is a stranger tale, one that begins with iron nails, the very bones of the ship itself, and ends with a cultural misunderstanding that still fascinates historians today. This is the story of HMS Dolphin, the first ship to circumnavigate the globe twice, and how British sailors once exchanged the very nails from their vessel for what they believed were favors from Tahitian women. The HMS Dolphin was no ordinary ship. Launched in 1752, she was a 6th-rate frigate, armed with 24 cannons and designed to carry the might of the British Empire across the seas. She fought in the 7 Years' War, serving as part of Britain's global contest with France and Spain. But her true legacy began not with cannon fire, but with exploration. Europe, at the time, was still haunted by the myth of Terra Australis incognita, the unknown southern land. Geographers believed that some vast continent must exist in the South Pacific to balance the weight of Europe, Asia, and North America in the north. Even after Australia had been charted, rumors of another hidden land persisted. And so, in 1764, the Dolphin was chosen to seek out this phantom world, under the command of Captain John Byron, grandfather of the Romantic poet Lord Byron. Byron and his men crossed the Atlantic, paused in Rio de Janeiro, and surveyed the Falkland Islands before braving the brutal waters of the Strait of Magellan. Few places on Earth tested a ship's strength like this narrow, storm-lashed passage. Yet the Dolphin emerged into the Pacific, battered but afloat. What they found was not a vast new continent, but scattered islands, small, isolated, each with its own people, plants, and animals. They continued westward, eventually reaching Indonesia, then looping around Africa, and finally returning to Britain in May 1766. The voyage had been fast, under 2 years, one of the quickest global circumnavigations in history. And though Terra Australis remained undiscovered, the journey stirred curiosity. Tales of strange islands, exotic flora and fauna, and unfamiliar cultures filled the British imagination. So, almost immediately, the Dolphin was readied for another expedition, this time under Captain Samuel Wallis. In 1766, Wallis sailed the Dolphin back into uncharted waters. Once again, the crew fought storms around Cape Horn, spent months navigating dangerous waters, and suffered sickness from the long isolation. The ship creaked, and morale faltered. What they needed was land, food, water, and rest. By June of 1767, their prayers were answered. On the 18th of June, land was sighted. 5 days later, the Dolphin anchored off a lush, green island. Its mountains rose steeply against the horizon, its beaches shone with pale sand, and its people, curious, confident, and organized, paddled out in long canoes to greet the strangers. This was Tahiti. Wallis named it King George's Island. But to the Polynesians who had lived there for centuries, it was home, sustained by fishing, farming, and elaborate cultural traditions. The Tahitians approached not empty-handed, but with gifts: pigs, chickens, and baskets of fruit. For the weary crew of the Dolphin, this was salvation. Captain Wallis ordered his men to trade. At first, the exchanges were simple: glass beads, knives, and iron nails for food. But tension soon emerged. Hundreds of canoes surrounded the British ship, some carrying warriors. When stones were hurled, Wallis panicked and ordered his gunners to fire. Cannonballs ripped through the water, shattering a canoe in two. The message was clear. The British had firepower unlike anything the islanders had seen. Yet remarkably, relations soon calmed. Trade resumed. Suspicion gave way to curiosity, and a strange economy began to form, one in which iron nails became the most valuable currency on the island. Iron was unknown in Tahiti at the time. To Polynesians, it was miraculous. Harder than stone, sharper than shell, able to cut wood or fashion tools with ease. Quickly, a barter system developed. George Robertson, the ship's master, recorded the values. A 3-inch nail might be worth a pig weighing 20 pounds. Longer nails fetched even more. At first, this seemed harmless. The British had nails to spare, or so it seemed. But soon, the trade expanded beyond food. One day, Robertson was ashore with sailors granted liberty. They were approached by 3 Tahitian women, who made repeated gestures he did not understand. The men told him, "They only want nails." Confused, Robertson handed each woman a nail as a gift. Later, back aboard the ship, he recounted the story to the gunner. The explanation stunned him. These were not random women, but sex workers. Or at least, that's how the British understood it. The price of intimacy had been set at a single nail. From then on, the trade of nails took on a darker, more desperate tone. The sailors were so eager for companionship that they soon exhausted the ship's spare nails. Then, they began pulling nails from the very structure of the Dolphin. Hammocks collapsed as their fastenings were stolen. Cleats, essential for securing ropes, disappeared. Rumors even spread that the hull itself was being stripped apart, threatening the vessel's seaworthiness. In truth, the ship never quite fell into ruin, but the story stuck. It was retold in Britain as a tale of reckless sailors so blinded by desire that they nearly destroyed their own vessel. But the truth was far more complex than these sensational accounts suggested. Later, historians uncovered that the women Robertson met were not prostitutes in the European sense at all. They were most likely ritual specialists, followers of a god of war. Their encounters were part of fertility rites tied to seasonal festivals. When the British unknowingly cut down sacred trees, these women may have seen the strangers as divine messengers, pulling them into sacred rituals. Without a shared language, cultural confusion was inevitable. What the sailors interpreted as promiscuity by them may have been sacred practice. What the Tahitians saw as ritual exchange, the British reduced to commerce. Beyond the nails, there was a darker cost. Officers aboard the Dolphin worried about venereal disease. The ship's doctor reassured them. The crew was healthy. But 2 years later, when Captain James Cook arrived in Tahiti, he found the island in crisis. A syphilis outbreak devastated the population. Cook blamed it on a French expedition, but others whispered it had begun with the Dolphin. Whatever the source, the effect was catastrophic. Cook estimated that 9 out of 10 Tahitians suffered from Western diseases, forever altering the island's society. By late July of 1767, the Dolphin had resupplied, the crew recovered, and the holds were full of fresh provisions. They sailed westward, touching the Gilbert and Ellice Islands, the Marianas, and finally around the Cape of Good Hope. In May of 1768, the ship returned to Britain. She had not found Terra Australis, but she had achieved something else, the first vessel in history to circumnavigate the globe twice. And she had carried back stories of paradise, of exotic beauty, of women who, in European imagination, offered themselves for nails. These tales fed Europe's fascination with the South Seas, but also cemented stereotypes of tropical promiscuity that obscured the real Tahitian culture. The legend of sailors pulling nails from their own ship may sound humorous, even absurd, but behind it lies a tale of cultural collision, of misunderstanding, exploitation, and tragic consequence. For the British, nails were cheap bits of iron. For Tahitians, they were treasures of unimaginable value. For the sailors, intimacy was a transaction. For Tahitians, it may have been ritual, religion, or obligation. And in the end, what the Dolphin truly carried back to Britain was not just pigs and coconuts, but a story that reveals how fragile first contact can be, how easily desire, power, and ignorance can reshape entire cultures. The ship returned home, intact, but the people it left behind would never be the same.